the big question today is, are we heading for World War III? Is that something that is going to actually happen in our lifetime? And boom, we are live. What's up, everybody? Couple Casuals Podcast. I'm your host, Stefano. We are back again, me and producer Dean.
What's up?
Back on the hot mic here, guys, because so much is happening in Canada, so much is happening in the United States. This is usually what these solo episodes are for. Up to date, news cycle is moving so rapidly that by the time this podcast comes out, probably some of the things we discussed, there might be more things that happen. But there's been a lot of things, to say the least, that have unraveled in Canada and more precisely the United States, which I'm sure many of you know about. Down in the United States, we have possibly a big concern coming. A lot of people are thinking, a lot of people are worried about what is happening in the West. And the big question today is, are we heading for World War III? Is that something that is going to actually happen in our lifetime? Because, I mean, it's got to happen eventually, right? If you really think about it. I thought about this for a little while. Dean, how about you? I'm going to start with this before we even get into the topics. Do you think that we can, like World War III can actually happen in our lifetime?
I mean, of course, it's not impossible. I think there's probably a good chance it doesn't escalate to an entire world war, but I think there's going to be a couple more major wars over the next 50. I mean, it's going to be extremely hard to avoid.
Man, because if you think about it, there's got to be another, like there has to be a World War III, which we're going to talk about today. But the thing is, if actually it does happen, the technology and the weaponry and the things that we have now would decimate countries. So we really can't get there. But we're going to unpack that today, guys. Obviously, so much happening in the United States. We're going to start there with Donald Trump and Iran versus Israel, guys. This has been something that has been all over the news. We've had some interesting clips surface over the past couple of days where Trump literally dropped an F-bomb on live TV, which, I don't know, I did a little bit of research. I don't know if you have ChatGPT up there or something, Dean, but maybe you can check. When is the last time a president has ever swore, or have they ever sworn like the F-bomb on national TV, on international TV? That's what we saw. So obviously passions are running high, guys. This is pretty insane.
It's actually Biden in 22. He said, what a stupid son of a bitch. He was referring to Fox News reporter Peter Dockery.
Yes,
that
was a hot mic, though.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Trump literally leaned into it. You saw it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. He got pretty angry. He got pretty upset. So that was interesting. A lot of people's takes on both sides on how this is unfolding. Some people are saying, Trump is controlled by Israel. And then some people are saying that Iran needs a regime change because they're a radical Islamic regime and that needs to be changed. So we're going to weigh into it a little bit here today in today's conversation, but we're going to give you everything that you need to know about the Iran versus Israel situation that is happening and the possibility of World War III and everything you need to know about this war, guys, because there's so much happening, it's hard to keep up. But after that, we're going to dive into Canada, of course, because things are happening in Canada too that we need to talk about. But I had an interesting thing kind of happen the other day. I was on Netflix, never watched Netflix. I usually am a YouTube guy, as we were saying. Dean has about 11 plus hours of screen time on YouTube. We're not big Netflix guys. They're trying to charge us $28 a month to watch their services. But I was on Netflix and I saw there was a documentary on Rob Ford, the great Rob Ford. A lot of people loved him in Toronto. Dean, were you a fan? Did you like Rob Ford?
Yeah, he was a great source of entertainment.
Great source of dude. I wish I liked politics when he was in the leadership role, because I didn't at that time. I got into politics around like 2016 and started to pay attention because it was getting fucking pretty crazy. But yes, very interesting. So we're gonna unravel that. I'm gonna give you some of my takes. I'll give you guys the public takes on the newly released documentary on Rob Ford. We'll talk about that and we'll compare him to the I guess very lovely and interesting Olivia Chow, as many people maybe don't like her or like her. We'll compare the two. I think it will be interesting. We'll talk about the current state of Toronto and some places in Canada, including Alberta, and some new tax changes they're making in Alberta. I don't know if you saw that, Dean. They are going to be cutting tax by 20%. So we're going to talk about Alberta, the possible separatists of this country, because they are upset with what's happening down here in our ends. We're going to talk about the Canadian markets. A lot of things happening in the Canadian markets, in particular with the real estate market, and how reports are indicating that condo sales dropped to the lowest going back through 2012 and maybe even earlier than that. But we will talk about why and etc. Everything that you need to know in regards to the real estate market and some of the weird things that are happening here, including that 45,000 real estate agents exited the industry. Will their career be taken by AI? What do you think about that one, Dean? Pretty interesting, eh?
Definitely and hopefully.
Everyone's like, dude, it's so funny because like me and my friends make jokes about this all the time. Obviously, I have friends that are real estate agents. Shout out to my buddy Matt Campoli and many others. So, there's some good ones. There's good ones. And then there's just, the douchey ones, the car salesmen, if you will, of real estate, which we always joke about. Like, what do you hate more, or what bothers you more? Is it real estate agents? Is it the crypto guys that are just like hammering the crypto? Is it the greasy car salesman? Which one is the worst? Maybe we'll talk about it today. We'll get Dean's take and all your takes on what is the most annoying industry. But yeah, 45,000 real estate agents exited the industry because I guess there ain't no bread. There ain't not a bean left. Nothing to really make in the real estate world right now. So their part-time gig of real estate has come to a sudden end. And lastly, we'll talk about Canada's new public president of public health. I think I put public too many times there. Canada's new president of public health under the Liberal government, and what has been happening with Carney and the crew. So we'll get into everything there that we need to know. But firstly, we are going to start with Iran versus Israel conflict and everything that you need to know. Are we going into World War III? What the hell is happening? Trump is freaking campaigning on the fact that he's never got into any wars and that he's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to end the catastrophes that are happening in the Middle East on day one of his presidency. And unfortunately, that has not happened. It would be for the greater good of the world if it did, but it did not happen. So just opening thoughts, Dean, what do you think quickly about the Iran versus Israel conflict and Trump's involvement here? Just a little take, just off the mic here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, day one is kind of ambitious to end something over there in the Middle East. That's been going on since Moses was in short pants.
This is true.
I think he's probably come the closest to any U.S. president to ending any kind of conflict and having, a long-term ceasefire and peace in the Middle East.
Peace in the Middle East. Well, before he left office last time, he had the Abraham Accord, right? Was it that one?
Yeah.
There was some peace deals that he was able to finalize. But coming in hot this presidency, I don't know, man. The tariffs, the freaking war, getting involved, first time U.S. president, United States getting involved in a major conflict, major war in decades. It's pretty interesting, guys. So we got to talk about it. Let's talk about the historical context. Let's set the stage here. Iran and Israel have been adversaries, as Dean was just saying, since Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution, which overthrew the pro-Western Shah. Iran supports Hamas, Hezbollah, and other militant groups that openly call for Israel's destruction and also death to America, which that's the problem there. That's a little bit where the regime is a little bit problematic, and people from the West can see how these folks maybe shouldn't have nuclear weapons, but we don't know. Like, that's the thing about the news, is you never know who's telling the truth. You never know the truth, because Trump could be saying something to motivate and provide substance to his moves and his actions, but then the other side could be contrary to that, and they could have some valid points on their end. So you're looking at it, and what we're doing today is we're just commenting on it, guys. That's what we're doing, because I don't know if I have a direct opinion on who's wrong or right, who's the bad guy in this situation. But how can you not comment on everything that is happening with the Iran and Israel conflict? Because it is getting pretty wild, especially with the United States getting involved. But Israel sees Iran's nuclear ambitions, as we just said, as an existential threat. Iran sees Israel as a Western-backed occupier. The rivalry has mostly played out via proxy wars, cyber attacks, and covert operations until now. So the recent timeline of events, let's talk about some things that happened. Of course, on October 7th, 2023, Hamas launches a major attack on Israel. Israel retaliates hard in Gaza, and Iran publicly supports Hamas but denies direct involvement. Dean, do you think Iran funded Hamas? Do you think they're the funders of these issues, which we're going to talk about how they got these funds in shortly here? But what are your thoughts on some of these recent timelines, especially obviously the madness that has been going on since October 7th?
Yeah, I think it's just a barbaric religious war. I think there's like two sides that are fanatical about their religion and they're on opposing sides. So
you think it's religion based?
I think that's like a good starting point. That's where it kind of starts, and that's where the indoctrination starts. You were born for this land. We were owed this land. You know, one side says they own this land, the other side says it's their land, and God promised it to us, and God promised it to us. And then there's financial motivations. It's like no simple answer for that, but I think religion plays a huge part in it.
Yeah, you got to be concerned when a country is yelling death to America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're an American, I'm sure you're going to want some action done in regards to that. And then, you know, there's some people that don't agree with it and think that this war is just, there's no end date. It's just what's happening. And they definitely didn't want the United States to get involved. There was a lot of speculation. Is the states going to get involved? Is the states going to get involved? If the states gets involved, this could be World War III, because then guess what happens? Maybe Russia gets involved. Maybe China gets involved. Maybe Pakistan gets involved. We're going to have some major problems. And then Canada obviously will get dragged into it because we're
For sure.
the little brother or little cousin, maybe even little son of the United States, unfortunately, because we don't use our resources and play politics properly. But that is a conversation for another day. But United States ended up getting involved. They did. The United States launched direct strikes on Iran, targeting 3 hardened nuclear facilities. That was a big one. What did you think about that when they hit those? They hit it, and they hit it hard. And apparently, Trump said it was a clean sweep. They destroyed them, 3 of them, some bunker bombs, just to bomb the shit out of them. There was some footage that came out, too, of these mushroom clouds popping up. What do you think about that attack? Do you agree with it?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. I think Iran is right now led by a fanatical religious leader, and you have no idea what these people are capable of if they're not afraid to die. So if, you know, normally the nuclear deterrent is, well, you blow us up, we'll blow you up. Putin, as crazy as he is, he doesn't want to die. Somebody who's as fanatically religious as the leader of Iran right now, you never know what they're capable of. So I would absolutely support something like that, where it's not surrounded by civilians. It's not like in the middle of the city where they're blowing up an entire city full of innocent civilians. This is like an isolated desert facility with like probably 0 casualties. It was probably fucking empty because they knew this place is gone. We got to get it out of here.
Yeah, they did it quick.
So they destroyed it. They flew those Freedom Doritos right over Iran and dropped these 30,000-ton bombs or 30,000-pound bombs and destroyed the fuck out of those facilities. And I support that because Iran's not a country you want with that much power.
Exactly. You don't want them to have nuclear weapons, which then the critics say, oh, for the past 30 years, people have been saying that Iran's been close to getting a nuclear weapon. That's what the critics say. So they're like, oh, this is just an excuse, which we'll talk more about that. But the Iranian people apparently are some of the most prominent people that want a regime change in Iran. That's what I read. Now, if you're Iranian listening to this conversation, maybe you can comment on it, but that's what they apparently want. Now, how they do that is, does the U.S. go in and freaking just destroy everything to get a regime change, or do the Iranian people democratically vote them out, if that is even a thing over there?
I think they're going to have to violently overthrow the government.
They're going to have to do one of those, eh?
I think everybody else should stay out of it, and the Iranians should overthrow the government and use what they can to do it, just like they did in Syria with that other fuckface there. Or was it Egypt? I don't know. One of those. But the people have to do their own uprising, because if you eliminate somebody and put in somebody else that you like, it's not chosen by the people who actually live there. They got to be the ones who do it.
Yeah, they do, and we'll see what happens here, because obviously there's already been speculation of possible Buddy stepping down or something might be happening. But these attacks were some of Iran's most tough, strong areas, deep underground, and they were very hard to find. The U.S. used bunker busting bombs to destroy them and did it successfully. But if you ask CNN and the fake news, they said that it is all not true, and that there's reports coming out that the bunkers and nuclear plants were not actually destroyed, which we'll talk more about that. But Iran retaliates with missiles barraging aimed at Israel and the United States assets. Some were intercepted by the Iron Dome and the UN's defense system. So they did try to retaliate, but it was a Mickey Mouse project.
So I don't know if you heard this part about it. That was just to save face. They called the U.S. government and said, hey, we're going to launch the same amount of bombs.
That's so weird. War is weird to me. How they just say, that's like me, somebody would say, yeah, you pissed me off. I'm going to punch you in the face. So just maybe have your guard up.
Just get ready to take this punch. It's not even going to be the hardest punch I can. No, well, they were not planning on that becoming public. They thought, like, listen, we're going to have to do something here so that people don't think that we're pussies. We're going to have to launch missiles at you so we can have some propaganda, shoot them down. It's not going to hit you. They're not even going to be that well aimed. They're going to be our worst missiles. Shoot them down, and then at least we can say we launched a
I did, yeah. It's like, why though? Like, what's the point of that?
It's a pathetic way to stay.
It's just to say, say that they did it. You're exactly right. So they did retaliate, technically speaking. Some did make it through the Iron Dome in Israel, which, the Iron Dome is supposed to be very strong, but obviously it can be penetrated, right? It's not as successful as they thought. But this marks a major shift from proxy conflict to direct military confrontation between Iran and the United States. It's something to be worried about, guys, because now the U.S. is involved. And under Trump said, there's no wars under me. On day one, I'll have that problem solved. It wasn't though. But under the previous administration, Joe Biden unfroze $6 million in Iranian assets. $6 billion. Sorry. Let's try that again. Under the previous administration, Joe Biden, because this is very important, Joe Biden unfroze $6 billion in Iranian assets in 2023 as a part of a hostage exchange deal, which that part I didn't know, but apparently it was the point is, because when Trump was in there, he shut it down. He shut the funding down to Iran. Joe Biden comes in 2023 and unfroze $6 billion in Iranian assets, which they had those funds. And what some say is they used that money to fund Hamas and other organizations. That's what they say. Now, is that something that you want Iranians to, the radical Islamics, to have $6 billion to be able to fund terrorist organizations? Because conservatives heavily criticize this move as funding a terror state that openly chants death to America. Very concerning. I don't know if this is the best idea forward. But now under President Trump, the U.S. has taken a decisive hardline stance, launching the most significant Middle East military operation in decades. That's huge, a huge movement, guys. The Trump administration has made it clear. The objective is not a regime change, but a clear warning against nuclear escalation. To your point, Dean, they cannot have a nuclear bomb. But do a lot of, to help me understand, do a lot of countries have the nuclear bombs?
A lot of countries have nuclear bombs, but they're not as radical as Iran. They're not led by radical religious fundamentalists.
So that's what the U.S., coming from the Western civilization, from the Western state, they're saying, guys, so-and-so can have who else has nuclear bombs?
Pakistani.
I know North Korea does.
North Korea, maybe. But the problem is, so it's one thing to have a nuclear bomb. You also need an intercontinental ballistic missile to carry the thing, right? And you need one that's not going to get shot down immediately. So there's a lot of countries that have nuclear weapons, but they're not any threat to any Western civilization because they'll never make it that far.
So you need the nuclear bomb, plus you need the intercontinental ballistic missile to carry that nuclear weapon into the target.
Exactly. And none of them, most countries, other than probably Russia and maybe a few others, they don't really have anything that can reach the United States.
Yes, that's great. I can understand that position. Now that was the motivation by Trump. That's why he said we needed to get in. This is the biggest intervention in a very long time. They don't want a regime change. They just don't want them to have nuclear weapons. That is 100% true. That's what they're saying. This military response represents a complete reversal of the appeasement strategy seen by the Biden years. Now, Trump's positions and response. Let's talk a little bit about that. Trump condemned the $6 billion deal that Biden previously negotiated under his administration, calling it a disgrace that emboldened Iran and weakened the U.S. global standing, which I probably agree with that. That is very interesting and unfortunate that he did that. After Iranian retaliation, Trump warned, if Iran wants to keep pushing, I'll hit the easy targets. They got lucky. The first hits were the hard ones. We'll rain bombs like they've never seen before. That's what he said. Because according to him, where they hit the nuclear plants, or whatever you want to call them, were the hardest targets. Now there's some very easy ones that if they want to escalate this war. But do you think Iran would really want to go toe-to-toe with the U.S.?
No, not a chance.
They can't, because the U.S. is the strongest military force in the world.
Ever.
Yeah. So nobody can really go against them unless maybe they teamed up, which that's where the World War III would happen. But even then, I don't know. I'm not convinced yet. Trump emphasized the strikes hit the most secure nuclear facilities, and many softer targets remain vulnerable. Though he's faced some political pushback, Trump is standing firm on the principle of peace through overwhelming strength. His supporters argue that this is what real leadership looks like when you prioritize national security over global diplomacy. That's the problem, because the left is having their opinion. Of course, they're going to criticize Trump and going to criticize his decision. Some people in the Republican Party are not happy with it. What is your take, Dean, on what's happening amongst the Republican Party? They're fighting with each other a lot. You got Tucker Carlson that's fighting with, what's his name over there? How do I forget his name now?
I just forgot it too.
How do I forget his name?
Let me just look it up.
Dude.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. You got Tucker Carlson that's arguing with Ted Cruz about Israel. Ted Cruz, the party split. People want to really support Israel. And, the argument I guess we can kind of unpack right now really quickly is the argument is that Israel runs the United States. So that's the first point. Second part is that they are basically controlled and told what to do. I don't know if there's blackmail accusations. I don't know if there's funding accusations for that. But the U.S. is siding with Israel. But then on the other side of that coin, on Trump's video with him getting mad after there was a ceasefire, which we'll talk about shortly here, then Israel came and just rained bombs. He's like, I'm very upset with Israel too. So what are your thoughts on that Republican Party, like the whole anti-Israel on one side and then the whole U.S. is run by Israel on the other side?
I mean, it's a complicated situation, right? Some people think they're stepping over the bounds of no new wars. So it's a nuanced conversation. Tucker is a little bit like, as much as I like him and I fuck with his content sometimes, I can't even watch his show because he's a little over the top on a lot of things, and a lot of it seems insincere. So I don't really agree with what Tucker was saying. I don't agree with Ted Cruz either. I think Ted Cruz is a greasy kind of dude too. But I agree with what Trump is doing. So I don't know. The split is kind of awkward. I think it's a lot of uninformed people probably who are against war, which you should be, and nobody wants to get into a new war in the Middle East. But I don't think that's what's happening. So I think there's a lot of people who are confused on both sides, and this will blow over.
On the whole, like Israel runs the United States. Do you think there's any truth to that?
I mean, to a certain extent, other countries and other corporations do run the United States. It's funding and it's support and allies. And I don't think they run the United States. I think there's a limit to what
heavy influence on decisions.
Of course, they have heavy influence. I don't think that. I think they're an ally for America in the Middle East. They're a Western ally in the middle of a desert of Middle Eastern countries, Muslim countries that don't hold necessarily the same values as United States and Canada and England and all those countries, right? So I think it's kind of like we got to support these guys. They're kind of a shining light in the darkness of the Middle East for us here, right? And so you see him trying to make allies with all the other Middle Eastern countries who don't want this kind of religious bullshit. There's much younger leaders in their 30s, early 40s who aren't about this religious shit. And they want to have a prosperous country. They want to get involved in AI. They want to be partners with the United States instead of trying to compete with them and overthrow them.
The one thing I will say is I think Trump's aim is peace, because all he's saying since he got into office was he was trying to negotiate a ceasefire. He was trying to negotiate a peace between Ukraine and Iran. Ukraine and Russia. There's the infamous clips of him freaking out at Zelensky in the Oval Office. These things are very evident. It seems that he's at least trying to get peace. He tried to negotiate a ceasefire with Israel and he's trying to get it, like when things happen, he's trying to do it right away. And he did call for Iran to come to the table and negotiate before he attacked, and then he did attack. Some argue the timeline wasn't enough, but it seems that he's trying to posture up a possible resolution. So I'm not 100% certain on it, but it's a very complicated, like you said, and interesting in the outside looking in on how these things are unfolding. But so far, no major deaths, anything. Obviously, there is in Gaza and things that are happening there, but in this current one, it was pretty clean. Now, let's talk a little bit about the ceasefire controversy and the media spin. Trump recently negotiated a ceasefire deal, which was being celebrated as a major diplomatic win, especially by him. He comes out, this is the major deal. This was huge. A move that signaled restraint and statesmanship. But just hours later, Israel resumed airstrikes, dropping bombs despite the deal, reportedly without informing Trump. So he was pissed off. That's when he came on the clip and said, these guys, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. He freaked out pretty bad. So he was pretty upset with Israel. In response, Trump lashed out to the media with visible frustration, swearing during a press encounter, accusing journalists of spinning the narrative also, and downplaying the sabotage of his peace offerings. He called Israel's actions disrespectful and accused the media of protecting them at all costs while under American leadership. He was getting very upset there, freaking out because he got a lot of people with different takes and a lot of different opinions from the media, always trying to go after Trump. What a life, by the way. Conservatives see this as proof that Trump wants peace, as we were just kind of alluding to, but he refuses to be walked over even by allies. Seems like he's the dad in the schoolyard and there's these two kids are just fighting with each other. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, CNN and legacy media are claiming now that early reports suggest Iran's nuclear facilities may not have actually been fully destroyed. That's what they're saying. That's the reports that they're saying, despite U.S. intelligence and many military confirming direct hits. Can you imagine that if they actually did, like Trump actually destroyed them like successfully, which by all accounts it seemed that it is, that you got CNN and other legacy medias that are trying to undermine? That's a weird thing. Like you're on the same team, guys.
They got Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
Still, it's crazy.
It's just unbelievable, man. This is being viewed by many as many on the right as a classic media manipulation, an effort to discredit the effectiveness of Trump-led operation and dampen his foreign policy victory. That's sort of the consensus there. Now let's talk a little bit more about the key insights and comparisons. The Trump administration has stated it does not seek to overthrow the Iranian regime, but critics say this closely mirrors the pre-Iraq war rhetoric, which focused on weapons of mass destruction, vague red lines, and open-ended escalation. So a lot of people are looking at this and going, hey, wait a minute. We don't want the United States to get dragged into a long, extended war for the next 20 years, because we remember in 9/11, I want to get your take on this, Dean. In 9/11, the terrorist attack happened and they said, we're going into Iraq because of weapons of mass destructions. And then people are saying, wait a minute, this sounds awfully familiar. I'm scared we're going to be going into war with Iran now because they have nuclear weapons. Do you think there's any correlation there?
No.
No, completely.
Totally different administration, totally different leader. Trump is not Bush. Trump is a lot like he's a New York guy. He's a lot like a mob guy. War is bad for business. Let's make
That's
money.
A good point. That is a very good point. Wow.
He's exactly like a mob boss. War is bad for money. We can all be rich if you just stop fucking bombing each other.
That's
what are we doing here?
That's what he said, too. In a nutshell, translation,
exactly what he
they
said.
don't know what the fuck they're doing.
That's exactly what he said. It's two kids fighting each other because one has a red hat and the other guy's got a blue hat.
Yep.
What the fuck are you doing? Get a job, make some AI, let's partner up, let's sell this oil, let's make this money, baby.
Yeah, it's well, some people are. I guess that's the fear that they have. But I think you're right, man. I think it's bad for business, and that's where Trump's a business guy.
Trump's
right?
a business guy. He's not like, but he's. I don't think there's any chance a U.S. troop sets foot in the Middle East to fire a weapon or anything like that. There's not a chance that he lets U.S. troops into Iran, to Israel, to Gaza. None of that shit is going to happen. Like it.
I don't. I think I'm in alignment with that too. I think I agree because also when that happened like 20 plus years ago, major different time.
Yeah.
Like. With the U.S. involvement, they got fucking drones and shit. They can destroy things in like seconds.
Yeah.
It's insane. So I don't think they're going to get involvement. But some other things that did happen, Dean, I don't know if you know about this, the public reactions and some riots that took place as soon as that happened. In New York City erupted in riots and protests following the strikes from anti-war activists, pro-Palestinian groups, and far-left organizations. They ran the subways. They started fucking protesting. They went pretty crazy and started freaking out in New York in particular. There's growing tensions, especially in the university campuses and urban centers, over the U.S. military involvement in the Middle East. Very, very big frustrations happening on the campuses, which there always is. There's always something going on with those folks. And I always say this: 6-1 professors. 6-1 professors are Democratic/liberal. Versus,
wow. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 10-1, but yeah, I mean,
6-1. That's insane.
Yeah,
that is insane. Across the board, many Americans, left, right, and center, fear the replay of the Iraq War and the massive costs, and no definitive end game. So, just some closing thoughts on this one, guys. This was a big one. We had to talk about it. Took up 30 minutes of the conversation here, but there was a lot to run through. This is an insane time. People are worried about World War III. Me and Dean, I don't know if we think we're going to go into World War III, but hopefully there's a resolution very soon. And like I said, a lot of things could possibly happen in the interim while we have this conversation, while this conversation is released. Some closing thoughts here. The U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities mark a pivotal moment in foreign policy, one that could define Trump's second term. It's true. These tariffs and this war involvement could really weigh in on Trump's presidency, his second term here. It's pretty big, and it's bold moves on his leadership. He's making some bold moves because they're not even popular amongst his own party. So to have the cojones, as they say, to do this, you got to respect that too. Trump's attempt on a diplomacy through a ceasefire deal proves he does not just want to bomb first. He's not that kind of leader, but when betrayed, he will respond with strength. That's what we really wanted to see here. We wanted to see how much do people really fear Donald Trump. And I think we're starting to see that. The narrative is now split. Trump, the peacemaker, versus Trump, the war hawk, depending on which outlet you're watching. That's kind of how it unfolds. So critics say Trump's achievement of no wars is now over. He's one of the biggest bragging points was that no wars under Trump. But If you ask him, he'll tell you Iran, as he tweeted out, can somebody tell Tucker Carlson Iran cannot have nuclear weapons? That's his argument. I want to know your guys' opinion on this. So make sure you engage. We got to understand what the hell's going on here because we only have so much time to cover it. But I think we covered a lot of it. I want to jump over to Canada now because some things are happening in the great country of Canada, which we opened up in the intro. We talked about the infamous $28 a month. Netflix releases these documentaries, sometimes hit pieces. I'm split on Netflix because, during the Chappelle thing, remember the whole Chappelle controversy? And then they were like trying to cancel him, but they didn't end up doing it. And then also there's the other side where they make these sort of very left-leaning projects. What do you think about Netflix as a whole there, Dean?
I think they're starting to see, I don't know if it's new leadership or what, but they're starting to see that the tides have turned here. Like, you can't coddle people and not release stuff that may be controversial or have a weird opinion. Like, you should just release it all and let people think for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the market's going to dictate that, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. But one of the documentaries that they released lately, Netflix released a documentary on Rob Ford, the very infamous Rob Ford, the very beloved Rob Ford of Toronto. They released a documentary on him, and let's talk a little bit about that, and let's talk about the public's reactions. The new Rob Ford documentary on Netflix has reignited major debate across Canada, trending online, dominating the headlines in some areas. Viewers are torn. Some are fascinated by the drama, and others are frustrated on the focus on mostly his personal scandals. So this documentary sort of told the story of Rob Ford, but the focus was on that he was addicted to drugs, that he was smoking crack, the crack videos, the infamous. They really put that one on a pedestal. They didn't focus on his accomplishments too much, but thankfully here on Couple Casuals Podcast, we will bring up some of his accomplishments. But that was what critics said. They said it's another Netflix hit piece focusing on the downfall of a very beloved individual here in Toronto, Canada. Conservatives and the working class Torontonians, how do you say that? Torontonians are pushing back. He had problems, but he was for the people. He was by the people, for the people, and he got things done. There's amazing stories, Dean, of Rob Ford showing up. And they tell some of these stories of Rob Ford, showing up to people's houses and helping them with minor, like, tree issues and stuff. Like, there was a lady who had an issue with her tree. He fucking was there on foot, helping her out, just really for the people. It was really nice to see that because you don't see that much in, not even by his brother, right? Yeah. You don't see much by his brother. Some critics would say that, his brother is a label in disguise and he's not anything like his brother Rob. But the story is pretty interesting. I watched it. I liked it. But the documentary barely touches on his policies, like we said, or the connections with his wins and his involvement with regular people. Instead, it leans towards sensationalism. Ford wasn't polished, but he was authentic. That is true. That's one thing that you can say about him 100%. And people know that he cared. So let's talk a little bit about what Rob Ford did, because you look at Toronto now and you look at all the problems that we're having in Toronto, okay? And we'll talk about those problems too. And you look at Olivia Chow, not really the sharpest tool in the shed, as they say. But some of the things Rob Ford did, just to jog through these quickly, he abolished the $60 vehicle registration tax, saving taxpayers millions, and offered relief to drivers citywide. Privatized garbage collections west of Yonge, improving service and saving over $11 million annually. He froze property taxes in the first year and kept increases below inflation through his entire term, rare in Toronto's history. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that, actually. That's pretty fucking interesting. He launched a full core services review to identify waste, duplication, and inefficiencies across the city department. Sounds like Elon Musk in the waste fraud and abuse. There's an infamous clip of him running through all the perks as a public. If you saw that one,
yeah.
Look, why do I get to have this? Why do I get to have this? And he's running through all these cards that they get as being, I guess, a public servant or as a political official. And he's because he's for the people, right? He's like, why do politicians get this? I'm just a regular guy too. He reignited union contracts, saving millions and avoiding strikes, standing up to powerful public sector unions. He canceled the $8 million Fort York Bridge project, which was seen as unnecessary spending by the downtown elite. He scrapped the city transit streetcar plan in favor of subway expansion instead, especially focused on the Scarborough and undeserved communities. He opposed surface-level LRT in Scarborough, arguing for a real subway extension, prioritizing infrastructure over ideology. He rolled back car-hostile bike lane expansions that made traffic worse in key areas, defending drivers in the suburban commuters. It's funny because Rob Ford commented on this before too. If you're on a bike, you should be like, a lot of them, they don't obey the traffic lights and stuff, which you're supposed to as a bike, and it's very dangerous driving downtown with some of these guys on the bike. They come very close to your car, and it's just their world. We're just living in it, guys. So that was interesting that happened. But gave a voice to the working class suburbs and long ignored by the downtown councillors, building what became known as Ford Nation, which his brother then took over. He was the campaign manager. I didn't know that. It says that in the documentary. It was interesting to see. He was very involved in the documentary too. Didn't watch it though. Rob Ford, his brother, just commented on it and said, guys, let the guy rest in peace. I'm not going to be watching this documentary. I guess he wasn't a fan of it. He showed up constantly. Rob Ford showed up constantly at community barbecues, school visits, public meetings, and personally called constituents back. Missed that guy, man. Just looking back. I wasn't as involved at politics at the time, like I said earlier, but just looking back and just being a fan of him shortly after he passed away, just taking in everything that happened. It'd be good to have a guy like Rob Ford back, because guess who we have now? We have Olivia Chow, the failed contrast. Olivia Chow came in as the so-called progressive to fix Toronto's problems. So far, empty gestures and real damage. We don't know why people keep voting for these people. I don't understand. Her most notable move? Implementing a rain tax. An absolute, very devastating attacks to the Toronto people. Like, why? What are you doing? It's a storm water charge on homeowners, churches, and small businesses. Can you believe that? Yes, Toronto folks are now taxed for the rain that lands on their roofs, driveways, and patios. Can you believe that? Olivia Chow implementing a tax on rain. That's what we got now. Instead, Rob Ford saving you money. Olivia Chow is taking your money. Exemptions and discounts often apply to big corporations and government-owned properties, but the small guys like you pay. You got to pay when it rains. That's the way it was. Meanwhile, under her watch, crime is up, property taxes are up, gridlock is worsened, and no new transit breakthroughs. Insane what's happening in Toronto. Chow is prioritizing ideological talking points like equality strategies and climate slogans. That's what she's on about. But to be honest, guys, I don't know about you. I would rather have crack smoking Rob Ford than wild, crazy, dancing Olivia Chow. I got to be honest with you. Dean, would you agree?
Yeah, she's a moron.
I don't know what's happening in the city of Toronto, but the people vote for her. The people have spoken. So speaking of Toronto and some other concerns that we're having here, guys, because people need to really take this in. Toronto and Canada broadly is going through a lot of changes, and we're in a little bit of a difficult. You ask the average person, you talk to them, and you just have a conversation. They're upset. They're frustrated. But then that makes me think, why do they keep voting for these people? I don't understand. But let's talk about Toronto and Ontario concerns. Homelessness is skyrocketing, up 17% since 2021. Shelters are overflowing. 10 cities and now fixtures are in public parks. Violent crime is rising, especially on the TTC. You saw the other day, that guy on the TTC is washing himself. There's a video of a guy on TTC. He's literally taking a shower on the subway or bus or whatever it was. I just can't believe it. Stabbings and assaults are becoming daily occurrences. Traffic has worsened. Toronto is now ranked number 3 for the worst congestion in North America, with average commutes rising from 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Just for me to get down here to film the pod, it takes me about an hour, at least. This didn't always happen. Now, like the spike in immigration and everything that has happened in this country, when the Liberals letting everybody and anybody in the country, and where do they come? They come to Toronto, they come to Montreal, they come to Vancouver. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. So guess what happens? The traffic rises. And guess what else is rising? The cost of living and taxes keep climbing. Average one-bedroom rent is over $2,600. Under child property taxes are up while services decline. Ontario's in trouble. But Alberta, on the other hand, seems to be doing very well. The province faces Ontario being a record $14.6 billion deficit for 2025 to 2026. It doubled since last year's due to economic pressures. So thank you to the Liberals for that. Elbows up. That's what they say, right, Dean?
That's right.
Alberta is rolling out a 20% tax cut on incomes up to $60,000, creating an 8% bracket down from 10%, saving families up to $1,500 a year. That's pretty interesting. So, Dean, over and out on this, Toronto and Ontario concerned, some of the things we discussed there. What are your thoughts on it, just to chop it up here a little bit?
Yeah, I think poor leadership will lead us down a road of failure, and the rising housing costs and the rising cost of living is no coincidence. I mean, Olivia Chow got elected because her husband was a very famous and beloved politician.
Is that what happened? How did that happen?
Yes, so her husband is Jack Layton. I'm 99% sure that's what her husband is, Jack Layton, and he was a beloved NDP leader. He was a great guy. He was a nice guy. He was kind of like the Rob Ford with no crack. And so once she started to run, people who are maybe a little disillusioned and maybe not as involved in the process, she'll be just like he was, and he'll be or she'll be just as good as he would have been if he was mayor. Let's get her in there. And of course, if you watch like 10 seconds of an interview of her, you can see that she is basically a 15-year-old child in the mayor's seat. It's insane.
I am shocked.
It's crazy how stupid she is.
You see her dancing, so like she seems erratic and just very cognitively questionable.
It's funny because she's the one who seems like she's on crack, but she isn't.
That's the irony.
That's the funny thing. The guy who was actually on crack did a much better job, and he hit it a lot better.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had the best freaking media.
Maybe it's because he had enough to eat at home.
No, that was my favorite one, bro. Oh my god, yeah, it's sad what's happening here to Toronto, guys. But we got to be optimistic and hope for change. But I don't know. I think it starts from leadership, like you were saying. It really does, man. It starts from leadership, and it's something that we need to really think about when it comes to these elections, just across the board. But some of the other things that's changing is the Toronto real estate. Let's talk about Toronto and real estate crisis, some 4 key failures. I pulled some data from the Reuters report covering Toronto's real estate market collapse in early 2025. There's a lot of very interesting things happening on the market, so let's dive into it here. Home sales have plunged. February saw a 28.5% drop in GTA home sales. March remained down 23.1% year over year, and April recorded the lowest spring activity since 2013. So nobody's buying houses. And if they're selling their house, they're not making any money on it. That's the freaking problem. So if people need to sell their house because they got no money, or they're dealing with inflation or rain taxes, then they're selling their asset, their biggest asset, and they're not making as much money. So if you got some cash you can throw at it, you might make some money, but it's tough, man. Sellers are slashing prices. That's the problem. It's in April, 66% of homes sold. 66% in April. Houses sold below listing ask, the most since 2013. Homes averaged 98% of list price, down sharply from the peak of market behavior. Agents are abandoning ship, as we discussed. Over 45,000 Ontario agents and brokers have exited the industry due to inactivity and financial pressures. A shocking 32.5% of realtors made zero sales during peak months. What do you think about these guys, Dean?
I think there was a lot of people who got into it and didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
During COVID.
During
COVID, they were rinsing people.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people got in it. They had a little bit of a network, and it's, not rocket surgery to fucking sell a house that people are dying to get anyways, right? So I think a lot of people were in there for the wrong reasons. And I'm sure a lot of our real estate agent friends, shout out Matt Campoli, would say that's good. We needed a little bit of a shakedown to get the riffraff out of the industry, because all those people, they don't have any experience, they don't have good intentions, and those are the bad agents.
Yeah, it's always a good time to sell. It's always a good time to buy, rather. Yeah. Kind of folks, right? It's always a good time to buy, and it's always a good time to sell. It doesn't matter, right? But yeah, the 45,000 is pretty significant, man. That's pretty big. AI taking over real estate eventually, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
The agents?
I think AI is going to do a lot of things, and what it's going to do is remove the bottom 75% of agents. So the people selling the bottom 75% of properties in terms of value are going to be gone, and then only the rich and ultra rich are going to want somebody, like a human being.
So they're going to stay like a very high quality properties, exactly, and stuff like that. They're going to want to, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of jobs. They're taking our jobs. It's going to be a lot of things that change due to AI, good things and bad things. We talked about in the last conversation. It was very interesting to see. But yeah, I don't know, man. Real estate agents, car salesmen, the crypto guys, amongst the biggest frustrations that some of us have to speak. Not all of them, but damn, it's tough. It's tough to see. It's tough to see all the time. But it is what it is. That's the nature of the beast, right? Sales. What are you going to do, right? Prices are dropping, but affordability remains broken. The benchmark price fell to $1.5 million in March. It's minus 3.8% year over year. Homes in Toronto are selling $50K to $100K under asking, a clear shift to a buyer's market. So if you're trying to sell, it might not be the best time, guys. It's a very, very difficult time in Canada. Elbows up. This is what you guys wanted. This is what's happening. We don't see any much changes. But speaking of the guys that are supposed to be responsible for the change, the guys that are supposed to be getting us in a better direction, we have to talk about Carney and the crew and the Liberals and what's happening there. Some things that have been unfolding with Mark Carney. Obviously, did you know, first just opening up here, did you notice that we don't hear any more about the 51st state and the threats of Donald Trump anymore? Did you notice about that?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not the election anymore, right?
Yeah.
So folks don't care about that anymore. During the election cycle, all we heard from the liberal media and from anti-conservatives or people that were supporting the Liberal Party is how Trump is coming after Canada and how Canada is threatened by the 51st state claims and how Canada is succumbing to these tariffs that's going to kill all the industries. But since the election has been done, I have not heard the news or anybody in that matter talk about the 51st state or the tariffs or these threats about Donald Trump in Canada. Why is it only during the news cycle that people found that important and relevant to talk about? Is it because now they don't need to spin this narrative to capitalize on these weak-minded individuals who decided to vote for the Liberals after 10 years of destroying this country? I think probably so. And that's the unfortunate part. You look at it and you go, what happened? You don't care about the 51st state anymore? You don't care about the tariffs that are going to destroy our country, which they probably would if they got implemented, especially the automotive industry. But the point is like, that's all you guys talked about during the election. Dean, what's going on? That's not a threat anymore?
Well, I think we spoke about this on another episode. Carney is best boys with. Carney was already friends with Trump, sure. So that 51st state shit was just a political tactic. He knew that they were never going to get Canada, but it was a tactic to fuck with Canadian politics. And his boy Mark Carney, they're in now, so the tariffs are a lot more chill, and the 51st state stuff stopped. Like if you even listen to Trump at NATO, he's like, "Well, we're going to be best friends with Canada." Like he hasn't said it
wanted to be
once. Yeah,
I think everybody needs to come to the conclusion that he wanted Carney in.
I mean, there's nothing hiding that. He literally said it would be easier to deal with the Liberals.
Yeah. Well, that was funny because people took that as like, oh, then that means conservatives should win because they're going to be tougher to deal with. But that actually worked in the Liberals' favor, man. It's crazy and unfortunate that was like most of the time the news literally. You want to know who runs your life? The news. That's who runs the media, the legacy media. For some, they still run these people's lives because they obviously influenced that election, because the moment it was done, nobody gave a shit about the 51st state thing. Nobody's concerned about the threats of Donald Trump. That was the biggest, on polls, that was the biggest concern for Canadians, not the things we discussed about crime, inflation, the future of Canada, the divide that we're facing in this country, high taxes, not these things. It was the threat of Donald Trump. That was the biggest concern. Now look, okay, there's other things happening. I guess the news cycle moves. But let's talk about Carney and the Liberals. Some 5 brutal truths, some things that are happening that they're not, promises not kept and things not happening like that. There was apparently an F-35 jet review. It's a sham. Carney promised to review Canada's $19 billion F-35 purchases, but he already locked in a $5 billion upfront. But he already locked in $5 billion up front. The review is just for show. The deal is basically sealed. That was one thing that they talked about. The carbon tax flip-flop, that was one thing that was very interesting. Gas is back up again. I don't know if you guys conveniently saw that during the election it was down, and now it's pretty much almost at where it was. But the carbon tax flip-flop shakes trust. The Liberals imposed a brutal carbon tax that crushed families, then quickly scrapped the consumer portion only after a massive backlash, which, by the way, it became so unpopular with the conservatives basically talked about the carbon tax election for the longest time, became so unpopular that even the Liberals had to make a decision to change on it. This flip-flop shows they're out of touch and they're reactive, not decisive. And we're going to see what's going to happen with that, by the way, guys, if they're going to put that back in. Massive new spending, but no plan to balance it. Despite promises to control spending, Carney's budget adds $129 billion in new deficits. So do we take that in, guys? That's what's happening with Canada. The biggest spending surge in years, probably more than Trudeau at this point, guys. with vague infrastructure promises and no clear of a repayment plan. They didn't even have the decency to tell you how they're going to spend your money. That's the problem. Unqualified leadership at Canada's top health agency. Did you see this? The new leader of Canada's public health agency is Nancy Hamzawai. I don't know if I said that properly. I probably didn't say that properly. Hamzawai. I don't know how to say it. Nancy Hamzawai, a chemical engineer with zero public health or medical expertise, was appointed head of the Public Health Agency of Canada, putting politics ahead of science at any agency critical for pandemic responses and everything else that you have to deal with. What did she do? You look at her and you go, I'm sorry guys, I'm not one to judge people, but she's overweight, Dean.
Yeah,
okay?
I saw, yeah.
The irony is very interesting because I don't know any other role that, if you want to be a military leader, you probably need some combat experience. You probably need to know about the functions of war, the diplomacy, the foreign relations with other countries. You probably need to know these things. You probably need to have some personal experience. A lot of these guys were formal combatants, or etc. I don't know any other role that you can not possess any of the obviously healthy qualities that you should in a leadership role of public health for Canada. Carney elected her, of course. Another act in the equality front or whatever he's trying to do. He's not electing off competence. He's electing off of progressiveness or whatever else that he's doing. This is the country of Canada. These are the people that are leading the fronts, guys. So you voted for it, you wanted it, and here we are. Lastly, some empty promises on trade and infrastructure. Carney vowed to break down trade barriers and build massive infrastructure projects. Months later, nothing concrete has been delivered. Just talk. What are your thoughts on some of these things here, Dean?
Yeah, well, with the new leadership for the Canada's health agency, I mean, she wears a hijab, so that's all you need to know.
You think that's where elected?
Yeah, of course. If the exact same woman was a different ethnic origins, she would not have that fucking job. She has that job to show how open and inclusive the administration is. There's, like you just said, she has no experience in public health. She looks like she's probably eating garbage food, and I'm not one to talk, but I'm also not the one in the head of public health. I'm like, she's overweight, and your only saving grace is the inclusivity, I think.
Yeah, it's because when you're electing somebody, I would think, especially for public health, because you're talking about health, you're advising on health, you're advising on healthy living.
Yeah.
You would think that you would be doing that yourself. You're practicing what you preach.
It should be somebody like fucking Joe Rogan levels of health. Somebody who takes vitamins, who understands food, who understands all that kind of stuff. If I don't know, we'll see what happens with her, but I don't have very many high hopes for somebody who's a chemical engineer.
Yeah, I don't even know some of there were some more things, like I don't know if you could search it up there, but her background is, I don't know how it relates to what it is that she's doing right now, but you would think that if you're going to carry out the leadership for public health, you would probably be practicing that in your daily life anyways. You would have the discipline, you would have the courtesy to ensure that you employ the healthy standards that an individual should have in their life to then teach it or project it onto the nation. What do you got?
It's just filling me in here. So, joined Health Canada in 2022, roles environmental programs in Canada's
environmental programs. That's right. She's one of those big climate change.
So we're probably going to have a lot of climate change shit like that. I mean, there's a lot of people who bring up climate change in regards to health, like, oh well, heart conditions and heating up the planet. It's all bullshit.
I don't know.
Moved to Health Canada in 2020 to lead the COVID-19 testing.
Oh, that's what we're talking about, the pandemic thing.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know too much about her. There hasn't been much time since I've learned about her and this podcast, so I'll have to do more research and see what she's accomplished in the past and what credentials she holds. But I just don't have high hopes just off the one interview that I saw.
Well, it's even like what we talked about in the last conversation. I'm going to wrap it up here now. Like the Minister of Public Safety. Remember? We were talking about how he didn't even know what the RPAL was.
Know what the
gun safety. It's been 3 bucks. That's the motif of this
But what does he look like?
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. That's what the Liberals elect on. They elect off identity, not competence. They elect off gender, not competence. They elect off sexual orientation, not competence. That's what we see. And you should, if those are the individuals that fill the role for the most competent and qualified individuals for that role, then so be it. Nobody cares about that stuff. Nobody cares. They just want the best person for the job, especially when you're talking about health, especially when you're talking about public safety. So, guys, that pretty much wraps it up. I wanted to talk about all these things. There's so much happening. I'm going to continue these informative kind of conversations where me and producer Dean here just jump on here and we talk about some things. But just to end this off on Couple Casuals Podcast, the last final segment we call Salute, I want to give a salute to all of you. I want to thank you all for the new followers, the new supporters, the new support that has been kind of flowing in. The clips in particular get a lot of engagement. If you made it to this point of the conversation, I especially want to thank you. A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy goes into these conversations. So sometimes I see these nice comments and even the bad ones. I thank you all for all of them. So I want to say thank you guys. Love nobody else. Until next time, salute.